transgression or something, if I'm breaking my agreement with you by having an indoor sermon. But it's like wet and rainy out there. I figured this might be okay. You'll get some like good audio and stuff. So I didn't do any sermons while in Las Vegas. I'm still trying to put together why Dirty Jesus didn't feel comfortable there. I'm thinking about it. It's a lot of things. I read an article, not sure for whom, just some article, just some cohering verbiage piece. So I've got a possible addition to the biblical canon of Dirty Jesus, and I'm going on faith that it's going to fit in. There's never any guarantee. So this is by Mark Twain. That fella. And it's called Letters from the Earth, and I just found it in a bookstore. And I guess let's give it a shot. We'll read the prologue together. Prologue. The Creator sat upon the throne, thinking. Behind him stretched the illimitable continent of heaven, steeped in a glory of light and color. Before him rose the black night of space, like a wall. His mighty bulk towered rugged and mountain-like into the zenith, and his divine head blazed there like a distant sun. At his feet stood three colossal figures, diminished to extinction almost by contrast, archangels, their heads level with his ankle bone. When the Creator had finished thinking, he said, I have a thought. I have thought. Behold. He lifted his hand, and from it burst a fountain spray of fire, a million stupendous suns which clove the blackness and soared away and away and away, diminishing in magnitude and intensity as they pierced the far frontiers of space, until at last they were but as diamond nail-heads sparkling under the domed vast roof of the universe. At the end of an hour, the Grand Council was dismissed. They left the presence, impressed and thoughtful, and retired to a private place where they might talk with freedom. None of the three seemed to want to begin, though all wanted somebody to do it. Each was burning to discuss the great event, but would prefer not to commit himself till he should know how the others regarded it. So there was some aimless and halting conversation about matters of no consequence, and this dragged tediously along, arriving nowhere, until at last the archangel Satan gathered his courage together, of which he had a very good supply, and broke ground. He said, We know what we are here to talk about, my lords, and we may as well put pretense aside and begin. If this is the opinion of the council, it is, said Gabriel and Michael, gratefully interrupting. Very well then, let us proceed. We have witnessed a wonderful thing. As to that, we are necessarily agreed. As to the value of it, if it has any, that is a matter which does not personally concern us. We can have as many opinions about it as we like, and that is our limit. We have no vote. I think space was well enough, just as it was, and useful too, cold and dark, a restful place, now and then, after a season of the over-delicate climate and trying splendors of heaven. But these are details of no considerable moment. The new immense feature is, what, gentlemen? The invention and introduction of automatic, unsupervised, self-regulating law for the government of those myriads of whirling and racing suns and worlds. That is it, said Satan. You perceive that it is a stupendous idea. Nothing approaching it has been evolved from the master intellect before. Law. automatic law, exact and unvarying law, requiring no watching, no correcting, no readjusting while the eternities endure. He said those countless vast bodies would plunge through the wastes of space, ages and ages, at unimaginable speed around stupendous orbits, yet never collide, and never lengthen nor shorten their orbital periods by so much as the 100th part of a second in 2,000 years. That is the numerical and the greatest of all, automatic law. And he gave it a name, the law of nature, and said natural law is the law of God. Interchangeable names for one and the same thing. Yes, said Michael. And he said he would establish natural law, the law of God, throughout his dominions, and its authority should be supreme and inviolable. Mark Twain uses lots of words that are hard to pronounce when you're reading them for the first time. Okay. And its authority should be supreme and inviolable. Also, said Gabriel, he said he would by and by create animals and place them likewise under the authority of that law. Yes, said Satan, I heard him, but did not understand. What is animals, Gabriel? How should I know? How should any of us know? It is a new world. Interval of 3 centuries, so this is in brackets. Interval of 3 centuries, celestial time. The equivalent of 100 million years, earthly time. Enter a messenger, angel. My lords, he is making animals. Will it please you to come and see? They went, they saw, and were perplexed, deeply perplexed. And the Creator noticed it and said, ask. I will answer. Divine one, said Satan, making obeisance. What are they for? They are an experiment in mortals and They are an experiment in morals and conduct. Observe them and be instructed. There were thousands of them. They were full of activities, busy, all busy, mainly in persecuting each other. Satan remarked after examining one of them through a powerful microscope, this large beast is killing weaker animals, divine one. The tiger, yes. The law of his nature is ferocity. The law of his nature is the law of God. He cannot disobey it. Then in obeying it he commits no offense, divine one? No, he is blameless. This other creature here is timid, divine one, and suffers death without resisting. The rabbit, yes. He is without courage. It is the law of his nature, the law of God. He must obey it. That he cannot honorably be required to go counter to his nature and resist, divine one? No. No creature can be honorably required to go counter to the law of his nature, the law of God. After a long time and many questions, Satan said, the spider kills the fly and eats it. The bird kills the spider and eats it. The wild cat kills the goose. Well, they all kill each other. It is murder all along the line. Here are countless multitudes of creatures, and they all kill, kill, kill. They are all murderers. And they are not to blame, divine one? They are not to blame. It is the law of their nature. And always the law of nature is the law of God. Now, observe, behold, a new creature, and the masterpiece. Man. Men, women, children, they came swarming in flocks and droves in millions. What shall we do with them, divine one? Put into each individual, in differing shades and degrees, all the various moral qualities, in mass, that have been distributed, a single distinguishing characteristic at a time among the non-speaking animal world. Courage, cowardice, ferocity, gentleness, fairness, cunning, justice, treachery, magnanimity, treachery, magnanimity, cruelty, malice, malignancy, lust, mercy, pain, purity, selfness, sweetness, honor, love, hate, baseness, nobility, loyalty, falsity, veracity, untruthfulness. Each human being shall have all of these in him, and they will constitute his nature. In some there will be high and fine characteristics which will submerge the evil ones, and those will be called good men. In others, the evil characteristics will have dominion, and those will be called bad men. Observe, behold, they vanish. Whither have they gone? Oh, whither are they gone, divine one? To the earth. They and all their fellow animals. What is the Earth? A small globe I made a time 2.5 ago. You saw it, but did not notice it in the explosion of worlds and suns that sprayed from my hand. Man is an experiment. The other animals are another experiment. Time will show whether they were worth the trouble. The exhibition is over. You may take your leave, my lords. Several days pass by. This stands for a long stretch of our time, since in heaven a day is as 1,000 years. Satan had been making admiring remarks about certain of the Creator's sparkling industries, remarks which, being read between the lines, were sarcasms. He had made them confidently to his safe friends, the other archangels, but they had been overheard by some ordinary angels and reported at headquarters. He was ordered into banishment for a day, the celestial day. It was a punishment he was used to on account of his too flexible tongue. Formerly he had been deported into space, there being none whither else to send him, and had flapped tediously around there in the eternal night and the Arctic chill. But now it occurred to him to push on and hunt up the earth and see how the human race experiment was coming along. By and by he wrote home, very privately, to St. Michael and St. Gabriel about it. I want to keep reading a little bit. I guess, like, is it normal sermon protocol to read it beforehand, to have things to say? Because I have many drumbling, excited things popping around. That was a really good list of adjectives. It was a beautiful list. Magnanimity, I think. Sorry. Interpretation will have to attend Satan's letter. Alright, is it, I will just read this one. I'm not going to read the whole fucking book. I'll kill the tape. Satan's letter to St. Michael and St. Gabriel. This is a strange place, an extraordinary place, and interesting. There is nothing resembling it at home. The people are all insane. The other animals are all insane. The earth is insane. Nature itself is insane. Man is a marvelous curiosity. When he is at his very, very best, he is sort of a low-grade nickel-plated angel. At his worst, he is an unspeakable, unimaginable, and first and last and all the time, he is a sarcasm. Yet he blandly and in all sincerity calls himself the noblest work of God. This is the truth I am telling you, and this is not a new idea with him. He has talked it through all the ages and believed it and found nobody among all his race to laugh at it. Moreover, if I may put another strain upon you, he thinks he is the Creator's pet. He believes the Creator is proud of him. He even believes the Creator loves him. He has a passion for him, sits up nights and to admire him, yes, and watch over him and keep him out of trouble. He prays to him and thinks he listens. Isn't it a quaint idea? Fills his prayers with crude and bald and florid flatteries of him, and thinks he sits and purrs over these extravagancies and enjoys them. He prays for help and favor and protection every day, and does it with hopefulness and confidence too, although no prayer of his has ever been answered. The daily affront, the daily defeat, do not discourage him. He goes on praying just the same. There is something almost fine about this perseverance. I must put one more strain upon you. He thinks he is going to heaven. He has salaried teachers who tell him that. They also tell him there is a hell of everlasting fire and that he will go to it if he doesn't keep the commandments. What are commandments? They are a curiosity. I will tell you about them by and by. Fuck off. Holy crap. And first and last and all the time, he is a sarcasm. What does that mean? Does that relate to irony? Does that relate to, like, assumes the opposite? Hypocrisy? He is a sarcasm. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I'm gonna keep reading. Whatever, I'm over my fucking, I'm over my YouTube, whatever limit. I get to do whatever I want. At his very, very best, he is sort of low-grade, nickel-plated angel. Nickel-plated. Nickel being the lesser armor, I guess. One thing at the pornography conference, I ended up meeting a lovely person, and she and I talked about sort of what was going on at the convention, and I sort of explained my difficulty and that I hoped I could sort of come there and be myself. And myself is wearing this robe. It is a place where I can speak the least amount of sarcasm with the greatest armor I know to protect myself, to grab very recent metaphors. And I expressed a feeling that everyone there was necessarily, because of the amount of rude conduct on behalf of everyone who was there, they were necessarily, all the pornographers were necessarily encased in their shells, in the best armor that they could wear, while at the same time having to be sort of hyper-sexualized without any nudity. That's a new angle that Vegas decided to add. So it was a long conference of no even discernible erections. Like nothing was sexually intoxicating there at all. And everyone was just wearing their shells. Everyone was wearing their shells, but in wearing their shells, it was obvious that they had to wear their shells because everyone was there without any, I don't want to say without any consent, because like a lot of like the fans were there to adulate those who they sort of masturbate to, which is fine. I'm not there. That's what the expo, I suppose, was for, but it was an excellent example of the curiosity of capital M men, including capital W woman, I guess. And so that's why I didn't wear the robe. Like I wore a noose, which I thought was pretty funny. And I don't know why. And I think the logic was, so it went. And the logic was I wanted people to grab it. Like I wanted to create some sort of a possible BDSM space. I wanted them to possibly like want to wear it or to wrench it on me and take some photographs and stuff. And it didn't. It was not. It wasn't received well because everyone there was every pornography person I could have spoke to was in their shell, and in your shell, you're not receptive to sarcasm, maybe. Like, what's suicide porn? I don't know. I have no idea. But it's more genuine than all the fucking porn that was there. Fucking nonsense. Alright, I'm gonna keep reading. Fuck this. Alright. Letter 2. Is this camera? I can't tell. Maybe I'm gonna put it down like a little bit. If we're gonna read more, I'm gonna fucking change the fucking frame, and I will try to not flash the camera. I think, like, I got a good voice going right now. Like, I don't want to lose this graveled opportunity. And yeah, and then so yesterday, so I got, like, finally got home, went to my buddy's place, his girlfriend picked us up from the airport, and then they got in a fight, and I'm in the middle of the fight. She was very angry that we'd been to the conference, and it was like, well, you have to ask us about the conference. And that didn't go down, and then they got in a fight about cell phones, and, like, I just, my mortal upbringing has made it impossible for me to not go into a shell of self-blame when I hear people fighting. And so anyway, so that was rough, and then I got home, and then I was just, like, out of money, because of my vow of poverty that I took without realizing, but now that I realize I took it, I'm just sort of trying to be okay with it. And just went to sleep for a little while and woke up and still felt awful, and I just, every time I just kept putting myself down for a nap, and I was like, you will wake up feeling better, you will wake up feeling better, rest is recuperative, you will wake up feeling better, and yeah, many hours of sleep later, and, like, waking up and reading a little bit of a book. I think I did. I think I'm here now. I'm here now, and I haven't been here for days, and I didn't. This is something of a very important outlet for me, and something of a very important relationship that I hope that I'm trying to foster with the people of the internet, and the people who aren't of the internet. So it worked, but damn, it took a lot of hours. It took a lot of going to bed. It's goings to bed. The magnanimity of going to bed. Letter 2. Satan continues. I have told you nothing about man that is not true. You must pardon me if I repeat that remark now and then in these letters. I want you to take me seriously. I want you to take seriously the things I am telling you. And I feel that if I were in your place and you in mine, I should need that reminder from time to time to keep my credulity from flagging. For there is nothing about man that is not strange to an immortal. He looks at nothing as we look at it. His sense of proportion is quite different from ours, and his sense of value is so widely divergent from ours, that with all our large intellectual powers, it is not likely that even the most gifted among us would ever be quite able to understand it. For instance, take this sample. He has imagined a heaven, and has left entirely out of it the supremest of all his delights, the one ecstasy that stands first and foremost in the heart of every individual of his race and of ours. Sexual intercourse. See, I knew it would connect. Sexual intercourse. It is as if a lost and perishing person in a roasting desert should be told by a rescuer he might choose and have all longed for things but one, and he should elect to leave out water. His heaven is like himself, strange, interesting, astonishing, grotesque. I give you my word, it has not a single feature in it that he actually values. It consists utterly and entirely of diversions which he cares next to nothing about here in the earth, yet is quite sure he will like them in heaven. Isn't it curious? Isn't it interesting? You must not think I am exaggerating, for it is not so. I will give you details. Most men do not sing. Most men cannot sing. Most men will not say when others are singing, if it be continued more than 2 hours. Note that. Only about 200 in 100 can play upon a musical instrument, and not 4 in 100 can have any wish to learn how. Set that down. Many men pray, not many of them like to do it. A few pray long, the others make a shortcut. More men go to church than want to. To 49 men in 50, the Sabbath day is a dreary, dreary bore. Of all the men in a church on a Sunday, 2/3 are tired when the service is half over, and the rest before it is finished. The gladdest moment for all of them is when the preacher uplifts his hands for the benediction. You can hear the soft rustle of relief that sweeps the house, and you recognize that it is eloquent with gratitude. All nations look down upon all the other nations. All nations dislike all other nations. All white nations despise all colored nations of whatever hue and oppress them when they can. White men will not associate with niggers, nor marry them. All right, Mark Twain, hold the fucking phone. Late 19th century context here. Alright, we'll play it again. And he put quotation marks around it. White men will not associate with niggers nor marry them. They will not allow them in their schools and churches. All the world hates the Jew and will not endure him except when he is rich. I ask you to note all those particulars. Further, all sane people detest noise. Further, all sane people detest noise. Okay. All people, sane or insane, like to have variety in their life. Monotony quickly wearies them. Every man, according to the mental equipment that has fallen to his share, exercises his intellect constantly, ceaselessly, and this exercise makes up a vast and valued and essential part of his life. The lowest intellect, like the highest, possesses a skill of some kind, and takes a keen pleasure in testing it, proving it, perfecting it. The urchin who is his comrade's superior in games is as diligent and as enthusiastic in his practice as are the sculptor, the painter, the pianist, the mathematician, and the rest. Not one of them could be happy if his talent were put under an interdict. Like a prohibition, like a don't do it. Now then, you have the facts. You know what the human race enjoys and what it doesn't enjoy. It has invented a heaven out of its own head, all by itself. Guess what it is like? In 1500 eternities, you couldn't do it. The ablest mind known to you or me in 50 million eons couldn't do it. Very well, I will tell you about it. Satan, you are so fucking helpful. You're just a little dreamboat. 1. First of all, I recall to your attention the extraordinary fact with which I began, to wit, that the human being, like the immortals, naturally places sexual intercourse far and away above all other joys. Yet he has left it out of his heaven. The very thought of it excites him. Opportunity sets him wild. In this state he will risk life, reputation, everything, even his queer heaven itself, to make good that opportunity and ride it to the overwhelming climax. From youth to middle age, all men and all women prize copulation above all other pleasures combined. Yet it is actually, as I have said, it is not in their heaven. Prayer takes its place. They prize it thus highly, yet, like all their so-called boons, it is a poor thing. At its very best and longest, the act is brief beyond imagination. The imagination of an immortal, I mean. In the matter of repetition, the man is limited, oh, quite beyond a mortal conception. We who continue the act in its supremest ecstasies, unbroken and without withdrawal for centuries, will never be able to understand or adequately pity the awful poverty of these people in that rich gift which, possessed as we possess it, makes all other possessions trivial and not worth the trouble of invoicing. 2. In man's heaven, everybody sings. The man who did not sing on earth sings there. The man who could not sing on earth is able to do it there. The universal singing is not casual, not occasional, not relieved by intervals of quiet. It goes on all day long and every day, during a stretch of 12 hours, and everybody stays, whereas in the earth the place would be empty in 2 hours. The singing is of hymns alone. Nay, it is of one hymn alone. The words are always the same. In number they are only about a dozen. There is no rhyme. There is no poetry. Hosanna, 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 Lord, God of Sabbath. Ra, 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 sis, boom, ah, ah, ah. 3. Meanwhile, every person is playing on a harp. 3. Those millions and millions, whereas not more than 20 in the 1,000 of them could place an instrument in the earth, or ever wanted to. Consider the deafening hurricane of sound, millions and millions of voices screaming at once, and millions of harps gritting their teeth at the same time. I ask you, is it hideous? Is it odious? Is it horrible? Consider further. It is a praise service, a service of compliment, of flattery, of adulation. Do you ask who it is that is willing to endure this strange compliment, this insane compliment, and who not only endures it, but likes it, enjoys it, requires it, commands it? Hold your breath. It is God. This race is God. I mean, he sits on his throne, attended by his 24 elders and some other dignitaries pertaining to his court, and looks out over his miles and miles of tempestuous worshippers, and smiles and purrs, and nods his satisfaction northward, eastward, southward. As quaint and knave a spectacle as has yet been imagined in this universe, I take it. It is easy to see that the inventor of the heavens did not originate the idea, but copied it from the show ceremonies of some sorry sovereign, little sovereign state up in the back settlements of the Orient somewhere. All sane white people hate noise, yet they have tranquilly accepted this kind of heaven without thinking, without reflection, without examination. And they actually want to go to it. Profoundly devout old gray-headed men put in a large part of their time dreaming of the happy day when they will lay down the cares of this life and enter into the joys of that place. Yet you can see how unreal it is to them, and how little it takes a grip upon them as being fact, for they make no practical preparation for the great change. You never see one of them with a harp. You never hear one of them sing. As you have seen, that singular show is a service of praise. Praise by him, praise by prostration. It takes the place of church. Now then, in the earth these people cannot stand much church. An hour and a quarter is the limit, and they draw the line at once a week, that is to say, Sunday. 1 day in 7, and even then they do not look forward to it with longing, and so consider what their heaven provides for them. Church that lasts forever, and a Sabbath that has no end. They quickly weary of this brief hebdomadal Sabbath here, yet they long for that eternal one. They dream of it, they talk about it, they think they are going to enjoy it with all their simple hearts. They think they are going to be happy in it. Ooh, they think. What did you think they thought? It is because they do not think at all. They only think they think, whereas they can't think. Not 2 human beings in 10,000 have anything to think with. And as to imagination, oh, well, look at their heaven. They accept it, they approve it, they admire it. That gives you their intellectual measure. Oh, Satan, keep going for it. The inventor of their heaven empties into it all the nations of the earth in one common jumble. All are on an equality absolute, no one of them ranking another. They all have to be brothers. They all have to mix together, pray together, harp together, hosanna together, whites, niggers, Jews, everybody. There's no distinction. Here in the earth all nations hate each other, and every one of them hates the Jew. Yet every pious person adores that heaven and wants to get into it. He really does. And when he is in a holy rapture, he thinks that he... And when he is in a holy rapture, he thinks that if he were only there, he would take all the populace to his heart and hug and hug and hug. He is a marvel, man is. I would I knew who invented him. 5. Every man in the earth possesses some share of intellect, large or small, and be it large or be it small, he takes pride in it. Also, his heart swells at mention of the names of the majestic, intellectual chiefs of his race, and he loves the tale of their splendid achievements, for he is of their blood, and in honoring themselves they have honored him. Lo, what the mind of man can do! He cries and calls the roll of the illustrious of all ages, and points to the imperishable literatures they have given to the world, and the mechanical wonders they have invented, and the glories wherewith they have clothed science and the arts. And to them he uncovers as to kings, and gives to them the profoundest homage, and the sincerest his exultant heart can furnish, thus exalting intellect above all things else in the world, and enthroning it there under the arching skies in a supremacy unapproachable. And then he contrived a heaven that hasn't a rag of intellectuality in it anywhere. Is it odd? Is it curious? Is it puzzling? It is exactly as I have said, incredible as it may sound. This sincere adorer of intellect and prodigal rewarder of its mighty services here in the earth has invented a religion and a heaven which pay no compliments to intellect, offer it no distinctions, fling it no largesse, in fact, never even mention it. By this time, you will have noticed that this human being's heaven has been thought out and constructed upon an absolute definite plan. And that this plan is that it shall contain, in labored detail, each and every imaginable thing that is repulsive to a man, and not a single thing he likes. Very well. The further we proceed, the more will this curious fact be apparent. Make a note of it. In man's heaven, there are no exercises for the intellect, nothing for it to live upon. It would rot there in a year, rot and stink, and at that stage become holy. A blessed thing, for only the holy can stand the joys of that bedlam. Okay, like one thing, people are like, why, like there I was saying I'm a preacher when I want to do porn at the pornography conference. I was like, I'm a preacher, and I think, like, I can read emotionally without having read something before. I can make sense of something as I'm reading it. Like if as discussed here, we're each given a little skill, a little thing that could be classified as a vocation. I think that might be my skill, is I can process things while I'm talking. Anyways, just people are like, you're not a preacher. Or people still say it. Like, people, it's not a sarcasm. And why is there no sex in heaven? And why is sex shoved into a space where we abuse it as opposed to revere it? That's what I don't get from the conference. And I get that. I feel like capitalism really likes that. Sort of an erection without a place to put it probably is an agent of purchase. Purchase. I think purchase is a word for cum or soil or seed or something. That's really fucking good. I really like the way Mark Twain writes in the voice of Satan. I'm a little bit elated right now. Oh god, yeah, there's... I'm not going to say that. That's going to take too long to explain. Well, thank you for having me back. It feels good. It feels good. Maybe I'll go outside tomorrow, but it was like rainy and a little chilly, and I didn't know I wanted to read for this long. In fact, I could just keep reading. I'm going to keep reading. If you want to masturbate. I'll do it. I'll do it. I can do it. It's going to be a marathon. I have to get more coffee. No more coffee. This is obviously only for the devout followers of Dirty Jesus. Letter 3. You have noticed that the human being is a curiosity. In times past, he has had and worn out and flung away hundreds and hundreds of religions. Today he has hundreds and hundreds of religions and launches not fewer than 3 new ones every year. I could enlarge that number and still be within the facts. One of his principal religions is called the Christian. A sketch of it will interest you. It sets forth in detail in a book containing 2 million words called the Old and New Testaments. Also, it has another name, the Word of God. For the Christian thinks every word of it was dictated by God, the one I have been speaking of. It is full of interest. It has noble poetry in it, and some clever fables, and some blood-drenched history, and some good morals, and a wealth of obscenity, and upwards of 1,000 lies. This Bible is built mainly out of the fragments of older Bibles that had their day and crumbled to ruin, so it noticeably lacks in originality necessarily. Its 3 or 4 most imposing and impressive events all happened in earlier Bibles. All its best precepts and rules of conduct came also from those Bibles. There are only 2 new things in it, hell for one, and that singular heaven I have told you about. What shall we do? If we believe with these peoples that their God invented these cruel things, we slander him. If we believe that these people invented them themselves, we slander them. It is an unpleasant dilemma in either case, for neither of these parties has done us any harm. For the sake of tranquility, let us take a side. Let us join forces with the peoples and put the whole ungracious burden upon him, heaven, hell, Bible, and all. It does not seem right, it does not seem fair, and yet when you consider that heaven, and how crushingly charged it is with everything that is repulsive to a human being, how can we believe a human being invented it? And when I come to tell you about hell, the stain will be greater still, and you will be likely to say, no, a man would not provide that place for either himself or anybody else. He simply couldn't. That innocent Bible tells about the creation. Of what? The universe? Yes, the universe, in 6 days. God did it. He did not call it the universe. That name is modern. His whole attention was upon this world. He constructed it in 5 days. And then it took him only 1 day to make 20 million suns and 80 million planets. What were they for, according to this idea? To furnish light for this little toy world. That was his whole purpose. He had no other. One of the 20 million suns, the smallest one, was to light it into the daytime. The rest were to help one of the universe's countless moons modify the darkness of its nights. It is quite manifest that he believed his fresh-made skies were diamond-sown with those myriads of twinkling stars the moment his first day's sun sank below the horizon, whereas, in fact, not a single star winked in that black vault until 3 years and a half after that memorable week's formidable industries had been completed. Then one star appeared, all solitary and alone, and began to blink, 3 years later, and another one appeared. The two blinked together for more than 4 years before a third joined them. At the end of the first 100 years, there were not 25 yet stars twinkling in the wide waste of these gloomy skies. At the end of 1,000 years, not enough stars were yet visible to make a show. At the end of 1,000,000 years, only half of the present array had sent their light over the telescopic frontiers, and it took another 1,000,000 for the rest to follow suit, as the vulgar phrase goes. There being at that time no telescope, their advent was not observed. For 300 years now, the Christian astronomer has known that his deity didn't make the stars in those tremendous 6 days, but the Christian astronomer does not enlarge upon that detail, neither does the priest. In his book, God is eloquent in his praises of his mighty works, and calls them by the largest names he can find, thus indicating that he has a strong and just admiration of magnitudes. Yet he made those millions of prodigious suns to light this wee little orb, instead of appointing this orb's little sun to dance attendance upon them. He mentions Arcturus in his book. You remember Arcturus. We went there once. It is one of the Earth's night lamps. It is one of the Earth's night lamps. That giant globe, which is 50,000 times as large as the Earth's sun, and compares with it as a melon compares with a cathedral. However, the Sunday school still teaches the child that Arcturus was created to help light this Earth, and the child grows up and continues to believe it long after he has found out that the probabilities are against it being so. According to the book and its servants, the universe is only 6,000 years old. It is only within the last 100 years that studious inquiring minds have found out that it is nearly 100 million. During the 6 days, God created man and the other animals. He made a man and a woman and had placed them in a pleasant garden, along with the other creatures. They all lived together there in harmony and contentment and blooming youth for some time. Then trouble came. God had warned the man and the woman that they must not eat of the fruit of a certain tree, and he added a most strange remark. He said that if they ate of it, they should surely die. Strange, for the reason that inasmuch as they had never seen a sample of death, they could not possibly know what he meant. Neither would he nor any other god have been able to make those ignorant children understand what was meant without furnishing a sample. The mere word could not have no meaning for them. The mere word could have no meaning for them, any more than it would have for an infant of days. Presently, a serpent sought them out privately, and came to them walking upright, which was the way of serpents in those days. The serpent said the forbidden fruit would store their vacant minds with knowledge. So they ate it, which was quite natural. For man is so made that he eagerly wants to know, whereas the priest, like God, whose imitator and representative he is, has made it his business from the beginning to keep him from knowing any useful thing. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, and at once a great light streamed into their dim heads. They had acquired knowledge. What knowledge? Useful knowledge? No. Merely knowledge that there was such a thing as good, and such a thing as evil, and how to do evil. They couldn't do it before. Therefore, all their acts up to this time had been without stain, without blame, without offense. But now they could do evil and suffer for it. Now they had acquired what the church calls an invaluable possession, the moral sense, that sense which differentiates man from the beast and sets him above the beast, instead of below the beast, where one would suppose his proper place would be, since he is always foul-minded and guilty, and the beast always clean-minded and innocent. It is like valuing a watch that must go wrong above a watch that can't. The church still prizes the moral sense as man's noblest asset today. All the church knows God had a distinctly poor opinion of it and did what he could in his clumsy way to keep his happy children of the garden from acquiring it. Very well, Adam and Eve now know what evil was and how to do it. They knew how to do various kinds of wrong things, and among them one principal one, the one God had his mind on principally. That One was the art and mystery of sexual intercourse. To them it was a magnificent discovery, and they stopped idling around and turned their entire attention to it. Poor, exultant young thing. In the midst of one of these celebrations, they heard God walking among the bushes, which was an afternoon custom of his. And they were smitten with fright. Why? Because they were naked. They had not known it before, they had not minded it before, neither had God. In that memorable moment, immodesty was born, and some people have valued it ever since, though it would certainly puzzle them to explain why. Adam and Eve entered... Speaking of sarcasm, you're a nut. Adam and Eve entered the world naked and unashamed, naked and pure-minded, and no descendant of theirs has ever entered it otherwise. All have entered it naked, unashamed, and clean in mind. They have entered it modest. They had to acquire immodesty in the soiled mind. There was no other way to get it. A Christian mother's first duty is to soil her child's mind, and she does not neglect it. Her lad grows up to be a missionary and goes to the innocent savage and to the civilized Japanese and soils their minds. Whereupon they adopt immodesty. They conceal their bodies. They stop bathing naked together. The convention miscalled modesty has no standard and cannot have one because it is opposed to nature and reason, and is therefore an artificiality and subject to anybody's whim, anybody's diseased caprice. And so in India, the refined lady covers her face and breasts and leaves her legs naked from the hips down, while the refined European lady covers her legs and exposes her face and her breasts. In lands inhabited by the innocent savages, the refined European lady soon gets used to full-grown native stark nakedness, and ceases to be offended by it. A highly cultivated French court and countess, unrelated to one another, who were marooned in their nightclothes by shipwreck upon an uninhabited island in the 18th century, were soon naked. Also ashamed for a week. After that, their nakedness did not trouble them, and they soon ceased to think about it. You have never seen a person with clothes on. Oh well, you haven't lost anything. To proceed with the biblical curiosities. Satan digresses. To proceed with the biblical curiosities. Naturally, you will think the threat to punish Adam and Eve for disobeying was of course not carried out, since they did not create themselves, nor their natures, nor their impulses, nor their weaknesses, and hence were not properly subject to anyone's commands, and not responsible to anybody for their acts. It will surprise you to know that the threat was carried out. Adam and Eve were punished, and that crime finds apologists unto this day. The sentence of death was executed. As you perceive, the only person responsible for this couple's offense escaped. And not only escaped, but became the executioner of the innocent. In your country and mine, we should have the privilege of making fun of this kind of morality, but it would be unkind to do it here. Many of these people have the reasoning faculty, but no one uses it in religious matters. The best minds will tell you that when a man has begotten a child, he is morally bound to tenderly care for it, protect it from hurt, shield it from disease, clothe it, feed it, bear with its waywardness, lay no hand upon it to save in kindness and for its own good, and never in any case inflict upon it a wanton cruelty. God's treatment of his earthly creatures every day and every night is the exact opposite of all that. Yet those best minds warmly justify these crimes, condone them, excuse them, and indignantly refuse to regard them as crimes at all when he commits them. Your country and mine is an interesting one, but there is nothing there that is half so interesting as the human mind. Very well. God banished Adam and Eve from the garden and eventually assassinated them, all for disobeying a command which he had no right to utter. But he did not stop there, as you will see. He has one code of morals for himself and quite another for his children. He requires his children to deal justly and gently with offenders and forgive them 77 times. Whereas he deals neither justly nor gently with anyone, and he did not forgive the ignorant and thoughtless first pair of juveniles, even their first small offense, and say, you may go free this time, and I will give you another chance. On the contrary, he elected to punish these children, all through the ages to the ends of time, for a trifling offense committed by others before they were born. He is punishing them yet, in mild ways, no, in atrocious ones. You would not suppose that this kind of being gets many compliments. Undeceive yourselves, the world calls him the all-just, the all-righteous, the all-good, the all-merciful, the all-forgiving, the all-truthful, the all-loving, the source of all morality. These sarcasms are uttered daily all over the world, but not as conscious sarcasms. No, they are meant seriously. They are uttered without a smile, conscious sarcasms. I just realized I want to be in the new Deadwood movie. I didn't know, I realized that before, but as I'm preaching this is my fucking audition tape. David Milch, creator of Deadwood. Shall I go on? Not as conscious sarcasm. So sarcasm is like a jubilation at, not, I mean, hypocrisy before, no, just like contradiction, a sarcasm is enjoyment of contradiction. So a lack of ability to perceive sarcasm is a desire or a need to see something in a totalizing sense. So people capable of sarcasm can see this possible sarcasm. I don't know, is Mark Twain writing sarcastically here? Is the voice of his Satan? I mean, Satan appears to be Satan is suggesting he might do a better job than God. Hence the banishment. Satan, the contrarian. I think that's the original. That's like whatever, translated from a million different languages and a million different crumbled other books. That was really, really nice. That was really, really nice. This, you know what? I just realized the audio, like, because I think I have pulled out the audio. I just want to make sure that's jammed in. Can you imagine if I've been staring at this camera for this long? Well, it would only be further ironic if it actually was not recording. But like, who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares if something is recording or not? I am happy to sit here and speak and speak and speak something and speak something to something and speak something to people with a game of sarcasm wrapped around me earnestly. I really fucking like this sarcasm thing. I really like how he is discussing this. I really want to be in the new Deadwood movie. I'm not fucking kidding. I don't have a fucking agent because I don't like that. I really want an audition. In the first season of Deadwood, there's a preacher character played by X, whatever. I gotta message him and ask if because he did not survive the first season of Deadwood. Spoiler. But maybe if I can like get him to write me a letter of recommendation. I'm curious. I don't know how like these things sort of work. But you know how you're not getting a role in Deadwood if you don't continue the marathon. Tape will run out. I'm not finished yet. Letter 4. Satan ain't done. So the first pair went forth from the garden under a curse, a permanent one. They had lost every pleasure they had possessed before the fall, and yet they were rich, for they had gained one worth all the rest. They knew the supreme art. Sex. They practiced it diligently and were filled with contentment. The deity ordered them to practice it. They obeyed this time, but it was just as well it was not forbidden, for they would have practiced it anyhow if 1,000 deities had forbidden it. Results followed. Results followed by the name of Cain and Abel. And these had some sisters and knew what to do with them. And so there were some more results. Cain and Abel begot some nephews and nieces. These, in their turn, begot some second cousins. At this point, classification of relationships began to get difficult, and the attempt to keep it up was abandoned. The pleasant labor of populating the world went on from age to age, and with prime efficiency, for in those days, in those happy days, the sexes were still competent for the supreme art, when by rights they ought to have been dead 800 years. The sweeter sex, the dearer sex, the lovelier sex was manifestly at its very best then, for it was even able to attract gods, real gods. They came down out of heaven and had wonderful times with these hot young blossoms. Interesting. The Bible tells about it. By help of those visiting foreigners, the population grew and grew until it numbered several millions. But it was a disappointment to the deity. He was dissatisfied with its morals, which in some respects were not any better than his own. Indeed, they were an unflatteringly close imitation of his own. They were a very